Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. As part of our World Menopause Day, we are delighted to invite you to our Health and Wellbeing webinar on bone health and menopause. Our speaker today is Suzanne Morries. She is a chartered physiotherapist who has worked in the HSE for over 20 years. She began her career in acute care before moving into primary care, where she now works part-time in domiciliary services within the Balbriggan network. Alongside her HSE role, Suzanne is co-owner of a clinical Pilates business called painfree.ie, delivering both in-person and online classes. She has a particular interest in health, longevity, and supporting women through the stages of aging. She is passionate about empowering women to stay strong and active. The session today will explore the importance of maintaining bone health during perimenopause and menopause, and practical exercises your staff can try during the webinar. Before I hand you over to Suzanne, if you have any questions throughout the webinar, please feel free to drop them into the Q&A at the bottom of the screen. Thank you.
Hello there, you are very welcome in joining me today to launch this HSE Menopause webinar. So the idea of today is to help bring attention to and promote this brand new resource that the HSE have created to help women navigate that perimenopause through to menopause, period of their lives. So my name is Suzanne Morries. I am a chartered physiotherapist and I have worked over 20 years for the HSE. I started in acute care and I now work part-time in primary care in North Dublin. So I am also co-founder and co-business owner of Pain-Free Pilates, which is a clinical Pilates business where we teach live classes in Swords and Malahide, and we have an online platform of classes as well. So my passion for the last number of years has really been in helping women who are kind of like late 30s onwards, early 40s, into that kind of postpartum phase, into perimenopause and through to menopause. So it's an area that really interests me, and I think the reason it does is because as a young physio, it was an area that really confused me. So we got very little training as an undergrad in, hormones or anything to do with menopause. And I noticed as a younger physio that when I would have women of that kind of particular age group coming into clinic, they would just have so many weird and wonderful, well, they weren't wonderful, but just weird symptoms. They'd have joint pains here, there, and everywhere. They'd have crawling skin and headaches and migraines and just so many things going wrong. And I could never really understand what was the cause of it, because as physios, we're always trying to clinically reason, like, what's going on. And sometimes these symptoms were vague, where they might have like knee pain on Monday, but by Thursday, then that knee pain is not too bad, but actually their wrist is sore. It kept chopping and changing. So it was only when I kind of delved more into hormones and what menopause does to the system that I started to understand a lot more about what potentially was going on in this cohort of patients. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the changes that happen as we go through that kind of period of our lives, and try to explain a little bit more the background as to what's causing those changes and then what we can do about them. So as we get older, we tend to get stiffer joints, and like that, it can kind of chop and change. Like, so you might just wake up one morning of the week and everything feels stiff and sore for no particular reason, and other days you mightn't feel too bad. So estrogen and testosterone are natural anti-inflammatory hormones, and as we have a nice kind of a supply of them when we're younger, things feel good in your body. And then in perimenopause, where you start to get this kind of fluctuation, like a roller coaster of these hormones, some days they can elevate, some days they can drop, and that's why sometimes we can just suddenly start to feel a bit achy and sore in just random joints. So we call this process inflammaging. So as our hormones decline, we get this kind of natural inflammatory, kind of a low grade inflammation happening in our systems. The other thing that can happen then is collagen loss. And I don't just mean the wrinkles and all of that, I mean in our tendons as well. So we've tendons all over the body, and you've probably heard women talking about maybe gluteal tendinopathy and rotator cuff problems and Achilles tendinopathy and plantar fasciitis and all these things. So when we're younger, we have a lovely supply of collagen in our tendons. So our tendons are lovely and contractile, and they can easily tolerate lots of load. And then as our hormones change, our tendons tend to become stiffer and less contractile. And unfortunately, then this is where they become more susceptible to injury because they can't quite tolerate the same loads. So you could just be kind of jumping off a low step or doing something in the gym or just a basic movement, and suddenly you can have kind of a bit of a tendon injury. So there's lots that we can do as physiotherapists and healthcare professionals to help with our tendon health as we age, and I'll talk a little bit about that in our kind of our practical class that we're going to do today as well. So the other thing that happens as we get older is we tend to lose muscle mass, and this kind of happens a bit more dramatically as we lose our hormones. So muscle is a lovely metabolically active material in the body. So the more lean muscle mass we have, the better our metabolism and the more energy that we burn at rest. And who does not want to burn energy as we are sleeping? And by energy, I mean fuel and calories. So we naturally lose lean muscle mass as we age. This is a process called sarcopenia. So what we need to do is we need to work against this. So 2 to 3 times a week, it is really, really highly advisable that you do some sort of strength training to really try to build, and I mean kind of heavier lifting, and that's to build our lean muscle mass and improve our overall metabolism. Um, the other thing it's worth saying is that when this kind of low grade inflammation happens and we lose our muscle mass and our tendons aren't as healthy, this can all also lead to loss of bone mineral density or loss of bone mass, which is why women become, and men, we become more susceptible to osteopenia and osteoporosis as we age. And this is, there's loads of different ways that can help with this. Nutrition is a big one, but exercise and loading our bones and our muscles is so important to help to lay down more bone mineral density and help to kind of avoid that loss of bone as we age. In saying all of this, the WHO guidelines recommend that 2 or 3 times a week we do moderate to vigorous intensity exercise. And this is kind of where you're sweating a bit or where you can't hold an easy conversation with somebody. So this can be swimming and cycling. This can be running if you're into that. So anything where your kind of heart rate is up and you're in a little bit of a sweat, this is really important, about 3 times a week. On top of that, they recommend that we strength train 2 or 3 times a week as well. And when we're strength training, it's kind of advisable to leave 24 or 48 hours in between just for recovery and injury prevention. On top of that, we should be doing some flexibility work to keep those joints moving. We should be doing some balance work as well, and probably some core stability work. So that's an awful lot to take on board, and it's an awful lot to do at a time in your life when you're probably at your busiest. Like menopause and perimenopause hits women when they have probably the most the busiest life ever, between financial commitments and work commitments and friend commitments and family and kind of probably aging parents and possibly younger children or teenage children, and it's all happening. So what I would say to you is you need to pencil out time in your week for yourself and for exercise. And the same way you would pencil a meeting with your manager in your diary, you need to pull down your diary and pencil in 30 minutes here and 30 minutes there for exercise, and be that going outdoors to get it, or there's lots of resources where you can do it from home now as well. There's ways and means, and it is more important than probably most of those other things in your diary to stay on top of your health longer term. So today I'm going to do a bit of an exercise class where we try and target lots of those different things we talked about. So I'm going to do some balance work, some flexibility work, and some strength work in today's kind of short class. And it'll just give you a snapshot of the type of things that you could be doing to help yourself through menopause. In saying all of that, it's really important to notice as well that as we lose our hormones, some women will find that their mood will just drop with that, and their motivation to do anything, especially exercise, can just go out the window. So if you're really struggling with mood and you just cannot motivate yourself to do anything like that, please talk to somebody, talk to your GP. Some women can highly benefit from hormone replacement therapy, and that can help, but there's loads of other resources out there and ways that you can help alleviate all of that. So I hope that you enjoy today's little whistle stop tour of exercise and menopause. It's kind of Pilates based because that's generally what I do. But like I said, there's so many other types of exercise that can be helpful at this time of your life. Once you're out doing something and moving your body, you're helping yourself essentially. So today's class is kind of for any level, but if you've struggled with your balance a little bit, do get yourself somewhere safe, maybe where you have a wall to hang on to or a little chair in front, just so that you're safely trying to go about the class. And afterwards, I will be available for some questions and answers. So you can ask me anything at all. I'm available for that purpose afterwards. So enjoy the quick class and we'll catch up then afterwards. Hi there. So I'm delighted to have you join me today for this menopause practical session. Like I talked about in the introduction, there's so many variants of exercise that we can do to help us in menopause. So today we're going to cover a little bit of balance, a little bit of flexibility, and a little bit of strength work. So you don't need any equipment, just yourselves. I know people are probably on their lunch break and they don't have a lot of time. So just do what you can, follow in, even for every couple of minutes helps. So what we're going to do is we're going to start in a standing position. So if you're obviously wearing high heels or any sort of a wedge, you're better off just to be in your socks or your bare feet. If your balance is a little bit off at all, find yourself a part of the room that has a little bit of wall to grip, or maybe a chair nearby or something that you can hold on to, just make it a nice safe environment. So I'm going to start with my hands by my side. My feet are hip distance apart, and what I'm just going to get you to do just for a moment is close your eyes. Now, if your balance is funny with your eyes closed, just keep a soft gaze on the ground in front. We want to keep this nice and safe. So with the eyes closed, I'm just going to get you to gently start to rock forwards and backwards. So bringing your weight into the balls of your feet and back through your heels. And I want just to let go of some of the tension that you might be holding. So for women in perimenopause through to menopause, it's such a busy, busy time. It's what they call the sandwich of life, because you have so many responsibilities between financial and family and friends and work commitments. So you really are probably stretched more than you'll ever be in your life, and all at a time when our hormones are declining and fluctuating and wreaking a little bit of havoc with our bodies. So it's important sometimes just to close the eyes and actually feel the ground. So what I want you to do now is really just shimmy from side to side, and I want you to feel the weight of your heels on the ground, and I want you to feel the balls of your feet resting down. Lovely. Okay, so from here now, then we're going to open the eyes and we're going to start to just lift those heels a little bit and lower. So gently just lifting the heels and lowering back down. Good. Lifting the heels and lowering back down a couple of times. Lovely. And then you're going to bring your hands onto your pelvis for me, and I want you just to sway a little bit. So don't think too much about it. I just want you to bring your hips and press them forwards, and then push your bum behind, and you're just circling around and around and just kind of opening up that area in your pelvis. Good. And back to the start for me. Okay, so we're going to go straight into some balance exercises. I want you to stay standing on your left leg. I want you to squeeze your core muscles in. So gently draw your belly button in towards your spine. And I want you to float your right leg into a tabletop position. That's what we call it in Pilates, but really it's just a 90-degree angle. So I want you to float, and then I want you to tap, and I want you to lift again. So I want you to really squeeze your tummy muscles in, and you're going to use those tummy muscles to help lift that heavy limb and tap. When we lift that right limb, we don't want to sway into the left hip. And as we become kind of perimenopausal and menopausal, we do have a higher risk of tendon problems, which I'll talk about a little bit later on. So I want you to squeeze through your butt cheek and your standing leg. Keep that pelvis lovely and solid. And we're going to lift and tap. Keep going for me. So we know then as well that 1 in 3 women are at risk of an osteoporotic fracture or will suffer with one at some point in their lives. So that's really, really high statistics. And I think we're all kind of very aware that we need to kind of do some aerobic exercise like walking, and we need to do some strength training. But a lot of people forget that balance is a really, really important thing to challenge as well. So people who probably attend Pilates classes will find, and yoga and Tai Chi, they do a lot of balance work. But other people might find that it's just not something that you do at all. So we're going to try the opposite leg now, standing on the right leg, squeezing into that butt cheek, engaging the core muscles, and just lift and lower. So what I would say to you is, if you're not doing anything like that throughout the day, just see if you can get it in your day-to-day life, like brushing your teeth, just standing on one leg while you brush your teeth, or just while you're boiling the kettle, try and just balance on one leg and see how that goes. When you're putting your runners on, instead of crouching down, just lifting one leg up and see if you can balance on one leg as you're tying your shoes on. So trying to get little bits of balance work in throughout the day is really, really effective as well, because every few minutes helps. That's it. We're going to lift and tap, lift and tap, squeeze the tummy in, lift and tap. Some of you might be feeling like your ankle is really wobbly as you're doing these. All those little intrinsic muscles of the foot are working hard to stabilize. And that's okay. Just bear with it if you can. And tap. Well done. Hold it there. Okay, so I'm going to go into a higher level balance exercise now. And we're going to try and get almost like a flamenco position with the legs. So easiest level will be that you have the ball of your foot resting on the ground and you're going to turn one leg out to the side. So my pelvis is still facing forward. I haven't twisted my hips. I'm just allowing my hip to roll out to the side. When you still have a little bit of your foot down, that's the easier level. If you can, then you're going to come up higher and into like this almost like a stork or flamenco position. Hold your balance for me in that position. Good. And then if you can, you're going to bring your arms out to the side. Lovely. Now, that might be enough for some people just to stand there, but if you can, you're going to bring one arm across and see if you can tap your arm and back to the center. Then you're going to bring the other arm across and tap and back to the center. Now, if you're finding, okay, I can manage this and it's not too bad, to make it even more challenging, what you can do for me is you can turn your head and look to the side. Now just go easy with this, just be mindful that it is quite high level, it's quite difficult. So again, if it's too much, whoop, and release. Good. Squeeze the tummy in to keep the core connected. Well done. Fantastic. Drop the leg down. Let's try the same on the opposite side. So again, we can have the ball of our foot resting on the ground. If you can, you can come up higher for me. Keep the hips like almost two imaginary flashlights on the hips facing forwards. And then you're going to lift those arms. Good. And this time, same again. See if you can tap even with the head facing forwards initially. Good, because this is hard. And then what we're going to do is, if we can, we're going to really get that vestibular system working. And we're going to rotate the head. And some of you will find on a particular day of the week, for whatever reason, you mightn't be quite as good. Yeah, good. Keep going. Just a couple more. You might also find some days are just harder than others to balance, but it's a really good idea to challenge that balance. Well done. And bring the legs back down. Perfect. So that's a little kind of a snippet. We haven't got much time today. So there's a snippet of some balance exercises. And what we're going to move into next is flexibility. Now, it is worthwhile saying before we begin that some people are naturally more flexible than others. It's genetic, it's inherent. Some people are naturally that little bit stiff. So don't worry if you're the stiffer person. Sometimes being really flexible can cause injuries as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start now with my neck, and we're just going to do some neck rotations. So I'm going to roll my shoulders back, and then I'm just going to look over my right shoulder and gently look over my left shoulder. Now, if you have any sort of osteoarthritis in your neck, you will find that you could be a little bit more limited in one direction. So don't force it, just gently rotate the neck. Good. And then when we get back to the center, we're just going to gently side flex the neck. So another little problem that arises with the change in our hormones, so that fluctuation of estrogen in perimenopause and testosterone as well, and then as it declines in menopause, what we'll find is you can wake up with stiff, sore joints for no apparent reason. So there's actually a name on this, it's called inflammaging. So it's like we get a low-grade inflammation of our joints as we age. The joys. So what can we do about this? So really here, movement is everything. And sometimes it's kind of counterintuitive to what you feel like doing, because if you have a stiff, sore shoulder, your kind of protective mode goes in and you don't want to move it. But often, if it's hormone related, we just need to get everything moving. Good. So that's our neck freed up. We're going to shrug the shoulders next, and then relax them fully down and slump them. So I want you to shrug up towards your ears and relax them back down. Shrug and relax. Good. So we're getting that whole upper quadrant moving. Shrug and relax. One more time. Shrug up and relax. Fantastic. Bring your hands onto your legs, and now this time we're going to slide to one side, and then we're going to slide to the opposite side. And it's a question we get all the time as physios, like, why some days are my knees sore and then other days it's my ankle, and then it could be just randomly my wrist on another given day. And if you're a woman who's kind of, I guess, anywhere from 35 onwards, it could be to do with just the fluctuation of hormones. Good. Lovely. So there's lots of different types of exercises that can be useful. Pilates is one that I always go to, but there's other ones like yoga and Tai Chi. Anything where you're moving is really good for flexibility. Well done. As we come back to the center now, we are just going to circle our wrists. So we're going to just circle them around and around, and then I'm going to get the elbows and rotate them at the same time. So it's almost like you're winding up a hose. So we're circling around and around. Good. And then I want you to do full shoulder circle. So just really releasing everything up and lengthening through the spine and circling those shoulders. Good. And from here, then I'm going to get you to grab your hands and press them out in front. I want you to bring your chin into your chest, and I want you to press your hands as far away from your body as possible. So you're feeling the stretch across that kind of mid-thoracic spine area. And then I want you to reach above your head and release those arms back down. So let's try that again. We're going to circle the shoulders. We're going to link our hands together and press them forwards. Drop your chin into your chest. And then we're going to reach above our head. And this time we're just going to side flex a little bit to the right and side flex a little bit to the left and release those arms down again. Fantastic. Okay, so from here now, we need to also consider strength. So this is like a whistle-top tour of all the things we need to be doing for perimenopause and menopause. So strength is really important, strength-based exercises, and especially for our bone health, weight-bearing exercises. I'm going to get you to start turning your toes outwards. So you're kind of in a wider stance position with the toes turned out. Bring your hands onto your hips for me. So from here now, we're going to just do a little tiny bend of the knees and release back up. Lots of you are going to hear clicks and cracks like a symphony of noises, and just completely ignore them. They are very, very normal to hear little noises in the joints. And unless you're kind of getting a sharp pain as you do that, maybe that'd be a good idea then to check with a physio. Other than that, it's very, very normal. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to figure out, okay, how far will my joints go? So if your hips or knees are too tight, just go really gently to begin with. And then I'm going to dip deeper. Good. And deeper again. Lovely. Now, while I'm doing these exercises, what I'm going to start to talk a little bit about is our tendons. So, to get our tendons loaded effectively, a nice strategy is to slow down the eccentric or the lengthening phase of the movement. So we're going to do the same exercise, but we're going to count for 1, 2, 3, 4 to go down, up for 1. So you keep doing that now. 4, 3, 2, 1, up for 1. So we have tendons everywhere in the body. And again, as we lose our estrogen, what tends to happen is our tendons start to become more stiff and less contractile, and they don't tolerate load as well, which is why often you'll hear about people who just suddenly rupture their Achilles tendon, or they have rotator cuff problems when they're trying to do kind of strength training in the gym and stuff. So we know that this kind of slow eccentric loading can be a really effective way to kind of help to lay down more collagen through those tendons. Good. 4, 3, 2, 1. Up for 1. 4, 3, 2, 1. Up for 1. 4, 3, 2, 1. Up for 1. Now, if you were doing this video at home, it might be a nice idea to grab some weights in your hand. So you could start with tins of beans. If you're used to using weights, you could really load it up. Good. 4, 3, 2, 1. As we continue now, well, let's just do a little biceps curl as we go. 4, 3, 2, 1. Up for 1. And again, you might have a little light weight in your hand for these. Up for 1. So you'll start to feel the legs working. Up for 1. 4, 3, 2, 1. Up for 1. Well done. So with strength training, we kind of need to be doing that 2 or 3 times a week, and that's really, really important. So it doesn't have to be complicated. A lot of strength training exercises you can do at home. You can use your body weight. You don't have to have fancy gym equipment. So what we're going to do next now is we're going to get our feet more hip distance apart. This time we're going to be sitting our bum back, imagining that there's a low kind of a couch behind us. And I want you, same idea, we're going to go 4, 3, 2, 1 as we swing the arms in front and stand up again. With the first couple, maybe just start small. See again what those knees are doing, what those hips are doing. And if you can, then you're going to start to sink deeper into that squat position. Good. And up for 1. So press your way through your heels. 4, 3, 2, 1. Get your bum right down if you can. And up for 1. 4. And up for 1. Keep going for me. 4, 3, 2, 1. So as we age, we lose lean muscle mass. And the only way to stay on top of that is by loading those muscles by strength training. 4, 3, 2, 1. And the positive side of that is that muscle is very metabolically active tissue. So the more lean muscle mass you can build, the kind of higher your metabolism, or the more energy and the more fuel that we burn at rest. So if you start to build muscle, you will notice then that even it's much easier to keep your weight down, and you will even burn energy as you sleep. So having that kind of lean muscle mass is avoiding sarcopenia, which is that loss of lean muscle as we age that naturally happens. So all of these things happen, but there is ways around it, and there's ways of staying on top of it and just being the best version of you that you can. And it does take a little bit of effort, but it's so worthwhile just investing in yourself, because otherwise sometimes those symptoms of menopause can start to wreak havoc and they can be too much for people. So just making changes, looking at your lifestyle. Nutrition is a huge one, and there's some nice resources in the new HSE menopause area about nutrition, upping our protein, all of these things. Good. 4, 3, 2, 1. And back into standing. Fantastic. Just shake the legs out there for a second. Perfect. So the next thing I'm going to do is a little bit of spinal mobility. We're nearly there because I know you haven't got a lot of time. So again, to have a nice healthy back, you do need to have strength, and it's nice to have core strength and muscle strength. But mobility, spinal mobility is really important. Now, if you have osteoporosis, what we would suggest is anytime you're doing a kind of a loaded roll down, I would lead with your hips instead. So if you've osteoporosis and you're rolling forwards, lead and press your bum and your hips back first for me. If not, you're going to take a breath in, and breathing out, you're going to go chin to chest, and then you're going to curl yourself forwards. And you're going to unfold the spine and go to the point at which you feel quite a pull down the backs of the legs. Take a breath in and breathing out to stack the spine. Now, in that position, if you have a history of any sort of a sciatica or nerve pain, really important to bend your knee on that side to keep that nerve off a full stretch. So again, if I had a history of kind of a bit of nerve irritation or sciatica in my left leg, for example, I can still do a lovely spinal roll down. I'll just bend that knee a little bit just to take the pressure off that side. Well done, and stack the spine again. Take a breath in, breathing out, chin into chest. Curling yourself forwards, take a breath in, and breathing out to stack the spine. Lovely. And from here now, we're going to do a little combination of a few exercises we did earlier. So we're going to roll the right shoulder. We're going to go into a side flexion like we did. We're going to bring the left hand down to join the outside of the right leg. Roll through the center, take a breath in, and breathing out to stack the spine again into standing. And from here, I'm going to roll the left shoulder. I'm going to side flex to my left, bring my right hand across to join it, reaching towards the outer leg, roll through the center. If you have a sore back, you can walk your hands up your leg to bring yourself back up. If not, you're going to curl yourself back up again, segment by segment. So again, roll the right shoulder, side flex, bring the left hand across, roll through the center, take a breath in, breathing out to stack the spine. And then left shoulder rolls, side flex, bring your right hand across, roll through the center, take a breath in, and breathing out to slowly just stack the spine again. Fantastic. From here now, we're going to do some big shoulder circles again. Big shoulder circles. And roll the shoulders back. Fantastic. So I hope that you all enjoyed that kind of 20-ish minutes or so of exercise. I guess it's a little whistle stop tour of the type of stuff that we need to be doing. So strength training, flexibility, balance work, really, really important. So thank you for joining me, and I will hope to see you all again soon. Hello, and you are very welcome back to the question and answer part of this webinar. So we got so many questions from participants today. Menopause is such a popular topic. So I've picked the most frequent questions that came in, the most popular ones, and hopefully I do justice to the answers here. I am available on the day on the live question and answer section. So if anyone has any more questions pertinent to physiotherapy, please give me a shout. So the first question that came in was, is it possible to reverse osteopenia or osteoporosis just with lifestyle measures alone? Or do I need medication? So the first thing to remember is that bone is a living organ. It's constantly changing, it's replenishing, it's melting down. You stress the bone and it's building new bone. It's active all the time. It's a metabolic tissue, and it does rely on estrogen to do that. In osteopenia, a lot of the time, really modest improvements in bone mineral density can occur through targeted lifestyle, and that's really, really positive stuff. So unfortunately though, with osteoporosis, complete reversal through lifestyle measures is not achievable. So evidence shows us that regular weight-bearing exercise, resistance exercise, if you have enough kind of dietary calcium, if your vitamin D levels are optimal, this can all maintain and actually increase bone mineral density, particularly in that kind of premenopausal women who have mild osteopenia. However, once osteoporosis is established, it's like a structural change in the bone architecture. So full reversal is going to be unlikely without kind of pharmacological support. Lifestyle measures, though, remain essential regardless. So they're going to be an adjunct to the treatment. So they're going to help to reduce your falls and your fracture risk. Your exercise is going to increase and improve your muscle strength and just help to maintain any gains that you're going to achieve through your medication. So in summary to that, your lifestyle factors they're preventative from osteopenia, I suppose, getting too much worse. They're supportive, but they're insufficient typically just as a sole therapy if you have established osteoporosis. The next question that came through was really, I guess, along a similar vein. And somebody asked, if I already have reduced bone density in my 40s, can I rebuild it, or is it about preventing future bone loss? So the good news is, yes, it is possible to rebuild bone mass in your 40s. I guess particularly if you're in that perimenopausal to early postmenopausal years where that bone is still metabolically active. All the studies will indicate that impact resistance training can increase your bone mineral density at key sites. But here's the thing, you have to be consistent. It's not about just doing something once a week. So the more recent studies will show that key sites like your lumbar spine and your neck of your femur, the bone mineral density can increase there from 1 to 3% over 12 to 18 months when performed regularly and progressively. So on top of that, like I said, you need your vitamin D, your calcium in your diet, and then also HRT for some women is going to really enhance bone rebuilding. So yes, you can get a meaningful improvement and stabilization of symptoms through kind of like an integrated approach. So the next question that came in are, how can I increase my energy levels? Now, this is really common at this stage of life. So if your energy is persistently low and you're really not feeling good for a long period of time, make sure you talk to your GP. It's worth getting your bloods done. You need to outrule things like, low iron, thyroid levels, check your vitamin D levels, that type of thing. If it's just kind of regular low energy on and off, the three main culprits here are sleep, your kind of hormones changing, and stress. So you need to treat sleep like you need to cherish it. And this is really hard because a lot of people in this age of life still have really young children interrupting sleep, teenagers interrupting sleep, elderly parents who potentially can interrupt sleep, so many things. And then the symptoms of menopause themselves, like those vasomotor symptoms like the hot flashes, can also interrupt sleep. So sleep hygiene is a whole other day's talk, but we need to definitely address our sleep. The other thing I would say is cortisol. So as women, as we get older, we naturally have an increase in cortisol, which is your body's stress hormone. Now, I went to a really interesting talk a couple of years ago by I think she was a psychotherapist, and she talked about managing cortisol in children and how children are naturally really good at doing this. So she explained that how we release cortisol quickly from our bodies is either through tears or through sweat. And she said that's why children will just burst out crying just to release that cortisol, and then they move on with their days as if nothing ever happened. Or children will naturally just run. They'll run the legs off themselves without even thinking about it. And as adults then, we just kind of lose that ability. We kind of hold in if we need to cry, we don't let it go. And often then we don't make time for exercise. So cortisol, to reduce your cortisol, another really effective way is your breathing and breath work and mindfulness and all these things. And again, I haven't got long enough to deep dive into these topics, but it's really important to know that if our cortisol levels are high, potentially it'll drop your energy levels a bit lower. What I would say as a physiotherapist is getting movement makes such a massive difference. Even like short bouts of activity are going to help. So your strength, your aerobic exercise, they're all going to improve your stamina and improve your mood. And it's so counterintuitive to what you want to do, because if you feel tired, the last thing you want to do is put on your runners and head out for a walk. But it is probably the best thing you will do for your energy. And you will find if you consistently start to exercise, your energy will actually improve. You'll find if you do exercise in the morning, you will have more energy that day rather than depleting your energy. I would say as well that we need to kind of shift our mindset that exercise is a privilege. If you have a body that can get out of bed in the morning, walk down the stairs, and potentially do exercise, no matter what level, we don't have to run marathons, but it's a privilege. And we need to kind of say that, do you know what? It's not that I have to do my exercise, it's I get to do my exercise. And when you start thinking about it like that, it kind of shifts your mindset a little bit. And you know what? One bout of being sick or having a kind of a chronic condition that will really kind of make you change in terms of how you view exercise, that you would do anything to be able to go out and do that if you're kind of in a position where you can't. And the last thing I'd like to say on this topic is to remember that your muscles, they're like a literal pharmacy that you have in your body. When you contract your muscles, it's like you kind of secrete, I should say, like proteins into your bloodstream. And they're really good for your brain health as well. They can make you more resilient to stress. They can protect you from depression. So like every time you do exercise, whether it's swimming, walking, cycling, jogging, whatever it is that you enjoy, you're contracting your muscles, you're helping your body manufacture these like antidepressant molecules and these energy molecules. So it's really, really, really important. And I hope that I'm motivating you and not annoying you, that exercise is key here to managing your lifestyle during this period of your life. Okay, the next question. I'm eating healthier, I'm exercising, but I can't lose weight. How much exercise is needed at this age? Okay, this is kind of the $1 million question, and it's such a common frustration for women because I think naturally when we're younger, we kind of have that lovely hourglass shape. And then as we move into perimenopause and into menopause, we tend to put up more weight, and especially around our tummies, our middle section. And unfortunately, a lot of this weight is not just kind of subcutaneous fat, that's the fat you can kind of touch on the outside, but it actually can often be the visceral fat, the fat that wraps in around the organs. And this is very, very dangerous from a cardiovascular point of view. So sometimes the real culprit here is not metabolism. And everybody says, oh, my metabolism slows when I get older. And the stats haven't really shown that so much. But what we definitely know is that from the age of 30 onwards, we lose about 3 to 8% of our lean muscle mass per decade if we're inactive. So what definitely is happening is that we're losing lean muscle mass unless we're really exercising and working that out. Muscle is a metabolically active tissue. It burns 3 times more calories at rest than fat does. So the less muscle you have, the lower your insulin sensitivity, the higher your fat gain. So what's really important here is trying to build lean muscle, and the more of that we have, the easier it is to control our weight. It goes without saying when we talk about weight gain that we have to look at our diets, and I think often there's just so much there's so many calories in processed foods and foods that we're eating that we're absolutely oblivious to, and we think it might be a healthy snack, and in fact it's not. um, if I was to give you, and I'm not a nutritionist, but if I was to say anything, I would say cut back on processed sugar. Um, because of this period of our lives and when our hormones are changing, we often get these crazy sugar cravings, kind of like you would have got kind of before your period before, but they can come at any time in perimenopause and menopause. So you get this intense sugar craving, you want to pick me up. And the more you give into that, the more processed sugar you're taking on, the more the weight is going to go up. So if you can cut back on sugar and just maybe even try fruit instead and more of a natural sugar, if you can add more protein to your diet, you will definitely feel fuller for longer. And the protein is obviously the building blocks for building muscle. So again, it's not my area of expertise at all, but what I would say is cut back on the sugar, increase your protein, and see how that goes. In terms of how much exercise you need to do, we've kind of already discussed that before, but at least 150 minutes a week of kind of moderate exercise. That's where you're a little bit breathless, things like brisk walking, swimming, that type of thing. If you can, 2 to 3 strength training sessions where you're actually picking up weights and working your muscles. And then the other thing then is we talked about before, which is your movement, your flexibility, yoga, Pilates, that type of thing is brilliant as well. And then don't forget, with weight gain, you obviously the medical checks as well, because it could be things like an underlying thyroid problem. And again, mentioning just stress, cortisol will drive up your weight, or make you hold on to more weight. So just finding ways for you to unwind, whether it's getting out into nature whether it's doing some meditation, some journaling, some breath work. So just, it doesn't have to be a full-time job, but just little ways to reduce cortisol. So it is a really common frustration, and you're not alone, but there are absolutely ways and lifestyle ways that you can help to manage this better. So our next question today is, what impact can it have on women who don't do any exercise? What impact can menopause have on them? Okay, so without exercise, your bones and your muscles are going to weaken much faster. So in the first 5 years after menopause, we get a huge decline, the kind of the steepest decline in our bone health. And if you're not working out or doing anything with your muscles, it's greatly going to increase your risk for osteoporosis and for falls and fractures. And these are very debilitating conditions. You know, when we lose muscle mass, this is called sarcopenia, you're going to lose your ability to just get out of bed independently, to get off the sofa independently, to be able to go up and down the stairs, to be able to get in and out of your car, to go shopping, to do all the things you might love to do yourself. That ability to do those things will reduce a lot sooner. It's also going to affect your balance, your posture, your energy, your mental health. Like I said, those little kind of antidepressant molecules that our muscles secrete when we exercise are so good for us. And even that release of cortisol when we sweat a bit is so good for us. So inactive women will often report that they have lower energy than others, they have poorer sleep, they tend to get more of the vasomotor symptoms of menopause. So this is your hot flushes. And it's worth talking about pelvic health as well. So without regular exercise, our pelvic floor muscles, our spinal stabilizers, they're all going to weaken, and that's going to lead to, I guess, an increased likelihood of pelvic floor dysfunction, incontinence, postural pain. You know, so like, guys, we want to thrive in this period of our lives, not just survive it. But the good news is it is never too late. So even like gentle strength work, walking, this can all help to rebuild strength, improve your mood, support your bone health. So if you're doing nothing, please just get started today. Don't wait. This is your future. These are the building blocks to how well we're going to age. So that brings us nicely into our next question, which is, I read about resistance training for bone health, but I've no idea where to begin. Can you recommend anything that I can try at home? So love a question like that, because it's a really common question, and I'm delighted that whoever you are, thinking about resistance training, because it is one of the most effective things you can do to support your bone health at any age. So the goal here is that we kind of want to apply progressive load to our bones and our muscles so that our skeleton is regularly and constantly challenged. So research shows us that even simple body weight and lightweight exercises, if done consistently, can help to improve our bone density, particularly in your hips and your spine. So if you're starting out at home, like, safe things that you can do would just be sit to stand out of the chair. So if you go sit to stand and repeat this continuously for a minute or two, you will really feel your leg muscles working hard. Wall push-ups are another easy one to try. Heel raises, so while you're boiling the kettle, just lift up and down, keeping the toes on the ground, lift the heels up and down off the ground. This is really good for, again, lower limb strengthening for those calf muscles. You could try little step ups onto the step of the stairs, lunges. You could get a tin of beans and even just overhead presses. So anything for kind of simple loading is going to be a nice kind of an entry point. You're looking to do 2 to 3 sessions a week. So I think every second day is nice. For me, I try and go Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then it's done. Your strength work is done during the week and you don't have to worry about it over the weekend. So as a physiotherapist and a clinical Pilates instructor, I also use Pilates based resistance training to target posture and core strength and bone loading in a controlled way. So this is particularly helpful for women during menopause, and especially for those with osteopenia, even osteoporosis. So on our online platform, because I know not everybody, first of all, can afford to go out and pay for classes and go to gyms and all these things, and first, secondly, don't have the time or the wherewithal to do. So if you're looking for a home program, I'm delighted to say that today we have a discount code for all HSE staff and family members. So we're going to send the code out with a follow-up email here. But we have an online platform with dedicated classes for menopause. They're all taught by chartered physiotherapists, and it's a lovely entry-level point where you can just do them at home, and you can use light weights that you might have in the house, whether it's tins of beans or whatever. So the discount code and the sign up link will be shared following this. But whether it's Pilates, gym based, home body weight routines, whatever it is, the most important thing is to start gently, be consistent, find something that you love, because if you find something that you even half enjoy, you're more likely to stick with it. If it's something that you absolutely hate, you are very unlikely to do it long term. So it's not as complicated as it might seem, and there's so much hype about strength training and this and that, and it can get a bit overwhelming, especially if you're not clued into those type of things. So don't overcomplicate it, and you can start with body weight exercises, and then as time goes by you can introduce a little bit of weight, whether that's resistance bands or tins of beans, like I said, maybe progressing up to some dumbbells, maybe barbells if you're, if you're progressing and loading. And that's the key, is to just keep kind of challenging it more. And as you build strength, those light tins of beans will feel like nothing after a few months, and you'll have to progress onto something a little bit heavier. And this is when you're really starting to build your muscle. So I hope that helps and helps to answer that question. Okay, so the next question is, what can I do to sleep better without hot flashes waking me up at night time? Okay, so sleep disturbance is probably one of the most common and one of the most frustrating symptoms of menopause for most women. And the reason it's happening is because of that fluctuation in your estrogen and progesterone levels. So these hormonal changes can disrupt your body's thermoregulation. So this leads to like hot flashes and night sweats, and it can also affect your melatonin production and mood regulation. The good news is there's actually lots of strategies that you can put into place to help with your sleep quality. The first thing you need to look at is your sleep environment. So they say to have a dark room. It should be a cool room. So you should really have the temperature in the room between about 16 to 18 degrees. So we will sleep way, way better in a well ventilated, cool room. Look at your bedding and look at your pajamas and what sort of fabrics they're made out of. So think about kind of moisture wicking fabrics like cotton. Heavy meals, caffeine, alcohol, within a few hours of bedtime, they are absolutely likely to disrupt your sleep. If your night sweats are severe, there are things like cooling pillows and cooling mattress toppers and stuff that people can buy. Um, Probably the most effective thing though for night sweats that are continuous and really interrupting sleep will be HRT. And this will generally lead to significantly better sleep quality and reducing those vasomotor symptoms. But there's lots of women who can't take HRT or who choose not to take it. For those women, there are other pharmacological options, SSRIs, there's different things that the GP can maybe look at prescribing. I would also say exercise, because I always say exercise for everything. But moderate aerobic, resistance based, like Pilates based exercise can improve your sleep regulation, your stress levels, your thermoregulation. But I would just say avoid kind of vigorous exercise right before bedtime, because that can just increase your core temperature. So it makes sense not to do it too late in the night. Um, you need to manage stress, and you need to look at your bedtime routine. If you're on your phone until the moment lights go out, you possibly will overstimulate yourself a little bit. So try and keep a consistent schedule. Try to go to bed at the same time every night, whether it's the weekend or not. So if you stay up and binge watch Netflix for half the night, you're going to throw off that sleep schedule and potentially increase those vasomotor symptoms as well, because sleep is key to everything. So we need to cherish our sleep from this age onwards. I would say relaxation techniques can be really helpful, like mindfulness, progressive muscle relaxation, slow diaphragmatic breathing, all this type of thing. Some women find magnesium really helpful, and obviously making sure that your vitamin D levels are good. And then other women, I think there's low evidence, but some women say that things like flaxseed and your kind of phytoestrogen rich foods can be helpful. If you have insomnia, cognitive behavioral therapy is an area that you potentially could look at as well. So it's very, very multifaceted sleep. But what I would say is, if it's really interrupting your lifestyle, if it's really, really bothering you, please seek help for that. and try not to fight on through, because you will find, even for your immune system, for everything, for ability to go out and exercise and work, sleep is key. So we had loads of questions about supplements, and this question is, does HRT reduce the need for taking calcium and vitamin D, and what's the kind of dose for prophylaxis? So HRT will help to slow your bone loss, but we still need calcium and vitamin D because they are the building blocks that are going to help your bones to continue to lay down new bone. So for adults, calcium, it's about 1,000 to 1,200 milligrams a day. And with your vitamin D, it's about 800 I use, I think, about 20 micrograms of vitamin D a day. Ideally, we will get these through sunlight, through our green leafy foods, through our diet, but supplements are often needed, especially in this country where we don't get a lot of natural sunlight. So the next question asked about what are the best supplements for menopause, and is marine collagen worth the hype? Now, I'm a physiotherapist, so that is not my area, but I did look into it a little bit when the question came in. As I've mentioned before, the supplements that we need to focus on will be your vitamin D and your calcium. Some women find magnesium really helpful to avoid for their sleep, and it can be helpful to avoid muscle cramps as well. As for marine collagen, the research is just not there yet. It's very, very limited. It may help your skin a little bit. It may improve your the comfort of your joints, but it doesn't replace estrogen or improve bone density. So it is not essential. Very expensive. So probably a good diet and an exercise would go much further. Okay, so the next question, does HRT strengthen your bones, and can you go on it at any age? So the answer to this is yes, absolutely. HRT can definitely strengthen your bones. So when your estrogen levels drop after menopause, we start to lose our bone density, and this raises your risk of osteoporosis. So replacing that estrogen can help to kind of maintain your bone strength and even reduce fractures. And there's really strong evidence from DEXA scan studies. There's like large clinical trials in women, and it showed that estrogen therapy increases your bone density in the spine and at the hip by about 3 to 5% in the first couple of years that you're on it. Women who were not on HRT kept losing bone mass over that time. Even low doses of staying on it helps to maintain the density, although it's worth noting that once you come off it, the effects will wear off once the HRT is stopped. And that said, HRT is not right for everybody. The timing of it does matter. It works best and carries the lowest risk, I guess, when it's started before the age of 60 or within about 10 years of menopause. After that, it can still be considered, but the risks and the benefits would have to be discussed with your doctor. So this person asked, she said, I'm on HRT, but is there anything else I can do for the achy muscles in my bones and legs? Okay, so that's a good question, because HRT will help protect our bones, but those kind of stiff and achy sensations are probably more common for muscles and joints and not actually the bones themselves. It can take a couple of months for HRT to kick in. Gentle movement, walking, Pilates, light resistance work is all going to be really helpful. I'm like a parrot, and just make sure that you're getting your calcium and your vitamin D and maybe magnesium. And the other thing that can also support joint health are omega-3s. If your pain is very localized in one area, it could be worth being assessed by your GP or a chartered physiotherapist just to figure out maybe what's going on with it. As I mentioned before in the talk, we do lose the kind of elasticity of our tendons as we go through menopause, and sometimes this can actually lead to muscle and joint problems as well. Okay, so a couple of questions came in about DEXA scans, and people wanted to know what age should you have a DEXA scan, how often should they be repeated, and how do you go about getting a DEXA scan? So this totally depends on your risk profile. So the first thing you would do would be talk to your GP, and they might look at different risks, like if you've had an early menopause, if you're very underweight, if you've had a long-term use of steroids, if you have a strong family history of fractures. they might refer you earlier. But usually, kind of women have their first DEXA scan around the age of 65. This totally depends on your risk factors. If you really were keen to have one done, talk to your GP. They'll kind of assess your risk and decide whether or not to refer you. The scan itself is really simple and painless. I haven't had one done myself, but I believe it's kind of more like an X-ray. You just lie down on a bed and the machine passes over you. It only takes a couple of minutes, 10 to 15 minutes maybe, and absolutely painless. So in terms of how often you should have it done, if your bone density comes back normal, I think they say every 5 years is enough. If you have osteopenia or a higher risk, probably every 2 to 3 years would make more sense. Sometimes if you're on treatment like HRT for bone health, your doctor might want to reassess you just to check if the treatment is having an impact or not. The next person asked, what if you have an inflammatory bowel condition like Crohn's disease, and how does this affect menopause and exercise? So that's a really good question, because inflammatory bowel diseases like Crohn's and ulcerative colitis can affect your bone health, and also your exercise tolerance. So it's important to take a very individualized approach here. Firstly, people with IBD, they're kind of at higher risk of reduced bone density, and that will partly be due to chronic inflammation and obviously malabsorption of your calcium and your vitamin D. Sometimes then there's long time corticosteroid use as well. So this actually makes bone strengthening and like resistance and weight bearing exercises even more important. But it may need to be introduced kind of gently and then adapted obviously around energy levels and adapted for flare-ups. From a menopause symptom perspective, they can kind of obviously overlap, because symptoms like fatigue and joint pain and low mood and estrogen loss can obviously then further increase your bone risk. So you need to think about supporting your gut health, your hormonal balance, and then musculoskeletal strength, and all of these things together are going to be key. For most people who have Crohn's who are in a stable phase or in remission, like low to moderate intensity exercise is safe and 100% beneficial. It's going to help to maintain your bone density, muscle mass, your cardiovascular fitness, obviously, and then your overall mental well-being. So during a flare-up, which will happen from time to time, exercise may need to be reduced or just modified back to gentle movement and stretching. Restorative exercises like modified Pilates, walking, things like this, where you just focus on your energy conservation and your recovery. So gradual kind of flexible exercise plans are key here, where, like, you know, when things are good, you have your progressive strength training, and if you get a flare, you pull it back. I particularly like Pilates for this type of thing because it can support your core strength, your posture, your pelvic stability, again, without overloading the system, and it can be easily adapted for, you know, different phases of your health. So really good question, and I hope I did that justice to the answer. So the next three questions I'm going to run through quite quickly because I think I've covered a lot of them already. The first one is, I have osteopenia and I got a lot of bone pain in my lower limbs. How can I manage this, or what do you advise? So osteopenia itself is usually kind of a silent disease. It does not cause pain. It just means that your bone density is lower than average. So the pain is likely coming from your muscles and your joints. I'd suggest to check in with your GP to rule out things like, you know, vitamin D deficiency or maybe arthritis. Get your calcium, vitamin D levels right. Gentle strengthening, stretching, walking, these are all going to be really helpful. Or consult a chartered physiotherapist and get yourself a tailored plan that's going to help with osteopenia. Should I be on medication for osteopenia? The answer is usually no. We talked about this already, that it's generally managed by lifestyle changes first. So diet, exercise, vitamin D, regular monitoring. Medication is generally only needed if you if it's your bone mineral density is falling quite quickly, if you've had a fracture, if you're in that high risk category, or if you've had long-term steroid use, then they might look at medication sooner. And what type of exercise is best to reduce or reverse osteopenia? So again, we're talking about our strength training. This is the most effective thing for building and maintaining bone density. Bones respond to mechanical stress. So they become stronger, they become denser. This is what we want. And without that stress, they just demineralize. They become weaker and more brittle, and then we're more at risk of fracture. So studies show, like I've said before, resistance training will increase your bone mineral density. And this is even in postmenopausal women and elderly populations where bone loss is typically irreversible. Strength training will still work. So anything. What I would say to you is if you don't have osteopenia, even things like pounding your way up the stairs. So as women, we're always, I think we've always been like, oh, be light on our feet. Whereas actually, if you pound like an elephant up the stairs, anything where you're kind of pounding your joints and that is really helpful to improve bone health. Things like Pilates and yoga are going to support your balance and your posture, and your balance is so important for preventing those slips, trips, and falls. And we did a little bit of that in the exercise class. So variety and consistency is key. Okay, the very last question we have time for today is a really interesting one. Somebody asked about how should a fragility fracture be managed during menopause. So a fragility fracture is basically a break in the bone from like a very low level trauma, such as just reaching out for something or maybe a fall from a standing height. It's usually kind of a clinical red flag for underlying osteoporosis, and it generally kind of is nearly like a turning point, but also it represents kind of a major opportunity then for secondary prevention. So the immediate management for any fracture is going to be your pain control, your immobilization, early mobilization as appropriate. As physios, we'll be looking at the falls risk to identify any contributing factors, and this can be balance issues, visual difficulties, footwear, medications, their home environment, whether there's rugs on the floor, whether it's cluttered furniture in the way. We look at all these things, and then obviously that person would need to be referred as soon as for a bone health assessment and DEXA scans and that. Medication would need to be looked at, and from a physio point of view, post like recovery from that, we would definitely be looking at kind of like a supervised resisted exercise plan, balance exercises. We have falls and balance classes in the community that are really effective. You may be encouraging their, again, dietary calcium and vitamin D. Smoking cessation is a big one here. But physios and OTs can look at things to try and like improve safe movement, whether it's giving out aids like rollators or sticks or frames, and posture correction, and trying to encourage independent living. So like I said, often it's a turning point. It signals the need for, I guess, more like an active bone protection plan, lifestyle modification. It's very much an MDG thing here. So early intervention can significantly reduce the risk of a future fracture of this happening again and really improve long-term outcomes. So I think from a physio point of view, like I said, it's very much an MDT approach. Um, Perfect. So, guys, thank you so much for listening to me. If you've listened to all of those questions, if you have any more questions, there is a live Q&A question and answer box there, or just email me directly. We are going to send out an email after this just to follow up. There will be a link to my online Pilates platform with a discount code for HSE staff and family members, that you're all very welcome to use if that's something you would like to do. I appreciate the support in today, and hopefully I'll meet a lot of you in the future going forward.